Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved.
This is a Tomahawk Media production covering true crime,
missing people,
unsolved crimes,
and cold cases.
Please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived ones, our mailing list, merch store, and links to our social media.
We also have a cute little virtual tip jar there, so if you leave us a tip, we'll give you a shout out on the show. So, Lauren.
So this episode is being made in conjunction with the Florida Themis Project, our nonprofit 501c3 organization that is featuring the two Broward County Jane Does, and we are running an awareness campaign about them for the month of July 2024. To learn more about the Florida Themis Project, please visit floridathemisproject.org. That's Themis, Themis. In the realm of legal cases and unidentified individuals, the term Jane Doe has emerged as a placeholder name. It is commonly used to refer to an unidentified patient or crime victim. The origin of the term can be traced back to the mid-1700s when John Doe was first utilized. Shortly after, Jane Doe came into existence as the feminine counterpart. According to NamUs, as of this recording, there are 14,786 unidentified deceased persons in the state of Florida. Today we will focus on two, both women and both from Broward County, Florida. Discussing Jane Does on a podcast is rather difficult. We don't know who they are, where they came from, what the circumstances of their death are, or even their true age. It's like discussing a phantom. So let's start with the oldest first. Jane Doe, 82. On June 20th, 1982, an unidentified white female was discovered at the Rinker Rock Pit at 7000 Northwest 16th Lane in unincorporated Broward County near Pompano Beach. Authorities estimate her age to be between 15 and 20 years old. In an effort to gather information about her identity, investigators have released reconstruction photos that depict what she may have looked like.
Yeah, please refer to both our Tomahawk Media and Florida Themis Project social medias to view these photos.
The young woman was clothed in a dark green Lacoste striped pullover sweater adorned with red and orange stripes. Additionally, she wore a maiden-form bra, size 32 to 36 inches, in a natural color. A notable accessory she had on was a thin gold necklace featuring brown beads placed approximately 2 inches apart.
In terms of her dental records, she had multiple fillings, this suggesting that she may have sought dental care regularly, and authorities also suspected that she may have been a smoker.
Jane Doe, 88. Skeletal remains of this female were found along a canal bank in the Everglades in Broward County, Florida, on January 19, 1988. She had been deceased for several years. The female is estimated to be 14 to 25 years old, standing approximately 5 foot 3 inches tall, and had brown hair. Osteoarthritic changes were seen in her hips, and previous injuries to her lower back and pelvic region were identified.
It is unknown if these injuries are a result of a traumatic event or just repetitive activity.
One tooth was found containing a filling, suggesting she had been treated by a dentist in life. The female was also found with a solid silver bracelet with a floral design pattern. We have images that are facial reconstructions created by a Knickknack forensic artist and depict what the female may have looked like in life.
Yeah, again, please refer to both our Tomahawk Media and Florida Themis Project social medias to have a look at all these photos and everything we have on these cases.
And we have Nick from the True Crime Garage podcast joining us. Nick is also sponsoring our case this month. So, hey, Nick.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be joining you both here today. And I'm very proud of what you guys are doing with the Themis Project. as you know, the three of us go way back. Listeners are probably not going to know that, but we go way back. And thanks to the captain who introduced me to the two of you, or introduced the two of you to me, we've sparked up a fast friendship and have traded some true crime stories and talked about cases over the years, and plenty of face-to-face meetings as well. And so when I heard that you were starting up the Themis project, I was very excited. And I know that you guys are going to be able to do some good, because I know the two of you, and I don't know your team that you've built, but I'm confident with the leadership that I see and with the enthusiasm that you in particular have, Lauren. So we got to talking, and I said, hey, there's this case that I've kept my eye on, and you guys are hyper focused on Florida cases. You know, I have a nonprofit that I'm very involved with up here in Ohio called the Porchlight Project, and anybody that would like to learn more about what it is that we do and what we have done successfully over the years can check that out online at porchlightonline.org. We have a bit of our history there, some of the cases that we've worked. But to put it as simple as I can, really your guys' mission, the Themis Project mission, is the same as the Porchlight Project mission. We are here to spread awareness about missing persons. We are here to attempt to use DNA to solve cold case homicides, and also to hopefully identify some Jane Does and some John Does. Now, we've had some success on all three of those fronts up here in Ohio, and so I'm really excited to see what it is that you guys can do. And I know that you've been working very hard so far in your early endeavors. But I said to Lauren, I pulled her aside and I said, hey, would you mind doing me a solid? There's this case that I've kind of had my eye on down there in Florida, and it's this Jane Doe case. And you guys, of course, know the area so well. And I thought, you know, even if I could just bounce a couple of ideas off of you and hear your reactions and get your opinions. And then the Themis Project comes about. And this is an opportunity for the two of us to get together, join forces, and feature this case, because here's the thing. This case is old, right? Like, so let's not shy away from that. It's old. So there's probably some people out there scratching their heads going, wait, this case from 82, this case from 88, really? Are we going to be able to do anything with it? Well, if you look at the history of these two cases, we've seen sketches, composite sketches of what they believe that these two persons may have looked like at one point in their lives. We've seen them updated with computer graphic images of what these persons may have looked like. So there are organizations out there, NCMEC in particular for the 1988 case, that has continued to update the information. And you update that information and you keep these stories alive, and you remind people about these stories. Because if you don't, they go away. And the thing here is there's somebody responsible in these cases. These two cases, you can look through the descriptions. You can see what law enforcement has written about these two cases. These are homicide cases. Somebody's responsible for why these two individuals are no longer alive.
Right.
And the thing is, with the passing of time, you can look at a cold case and say, you know what? We say this on True Crime Garage a lot. Time is the killer. Time is the real killer. Well, time is the real killer of evidence, time of physical evidence. Time is the real killer of witnesses. We all grow old. We all pass away. But you can use time. You can use the cold part of the case to your advantage if you have the right investigators and if you have the right know-how. And part of that is understanding that in our lives, relationships and loyalties often change. You can be friends one day, enemies the next. You can be enemies one day and friends the next. And so with that, there is likely somebody out there that knows something, that was told something, witnessed something, overheard something in one of these cases, maybe both. And maybe their loyalties have changed to that person. Maybe they are no longer afraid of that person for any number of reasons. And so that's what we're hoping to do with this campaign, is to remind the public and to remind the good people of the great state of Florida These cases are unsolved. Some horrible person did something horrible to these individuals, and they're no longer around. And we can get into some of the problem with these cases is the lack of details and the lack of information.
Well, one thing, Nick, most people forget is they think of, a 1982 case. Oh my God, well, whoever may have committed this is probably dead. I mean, we're talking someone, if they're in their 20s or 30s, is putting them at 60, 70 years old. So, I mean, you're not talking about someone that's 90 or 100 years old at the time. If you picture the average lifespan, or I'm sorry, the average age of someone that would be a killer or that would match an age of the people that we're talking about today. So if you add those dates of 40 years on top of that, well, that puts you roughly at about 60 some years old. So there's still time for justice.
Well, I mean, look at the Golden State Killer. How old was he when he was caught? 76, 77, something like that?
Absolutely.
I don't think that we should be worried that they're dead.
You're exactly right. And the thing here is we've seen just this year, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know all of the cases and all the cases that have received major breaks, or finally we get a case that's solved after 5, 10 years, decades even. But I know of 3 cases in particular that we were hyper focused on at one point on True Crime Garage, cases that I was discussing with other podcasters and other people close to these cases, authors and what have you. There's been 3 cases that I can cite for you right now that have been solved. And guess what? In all of those cases, all 3 of them, the perpetrator is dead and has been deceased for some time. In fact, it was just very recently, this month, June. So our campaign's for July, but just in June, the double homicide that took place at the Shenandoah Park National Park in 1996, they finally solved that. They connected it to a serial rapist out of Cleveland, Ohio, of all places.
I just saw something on that. Yeah.
Walter Leo Jackson Sr. Okay, so he was caught. I don't have the numbers or the information in front of me, but going off of memory with his arrest record and his prison record, his rap sheet will tell you that he spent time in prison for 5 different rapes. 2 of them I know to be quite violent. And then we learn, he raped and murdered these 2 women May 24th, 1996 in the Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, in the state of Virginia. Well, he used to drive out there and go camping there. He was an avid hiker. He likely just came across these 2 poor women or maybe even watched them for a brief period of time and decided to act. Well, now you take that information, and now if you look this cat up on the old FBI.gov website, Walter Leo Jackson Sr., unfortunately, that means there's a Walter Jackson Jr. somewhere walking around going, oh, man, my dad was a scumbag. I knew he raped people, but now he's a murderer, too. You look this cat up on FBI.gov, and what you're going to see now is you're going to see a big flyer that says seeking information. They're seeking information about Walter Leo Jackson Sr. because he just became a whole different kind of monster than he was 3 weeks ago, right? He's now on the list of known murderers. He's committed a double homicide that we know about. And if he's committing violent rapes in the city of Cleveland, Ohio, over the course of, 25 years, it's very hard for me to believe that he didn't kill another one along the way. So you have somebody like that. They're seeking information. We know the Colonial Parkway murders. They connected 2 of those 8 cases, 2 of those 8 homicides to an individual that we now know it was a murder. This guy didn't even have a police record that had any serious crimes on it. He had no violent crimes in his past. He had a very minor incident or 2 throughout the period of his life. And we now know that he is a murderer. They're seeking information on him. They're trying to fill in the blanks on his life, because if he killed 3 and went undetected for that period of time, how many other people did he kill? Joseph Norman Hill killed 2 boys, raped and murdered, abducted 2 boys in Boardman, Ohio in the 1970s. 1972, Brad Bluno. followed by 1974, David Evans, another victim. He killed both of those boys, got away with it during his lifetime, moved out to California, San Bernardino County, and lived a fabulous life out there, lived to be a very old man, died in a retirement home, lived a cushy life after killing two boys. Guess who wants to know more information about Joseph Norman Hill? It's Northeast Ohio authorities. But what they really need to be doing is they need to be making a line and saying, hey, anywhere between here and San Bernardino County and in California, we need to know more information about this guy, because what else did he do? And the sad thing about these three cases too is the legality of it is because these three individuals were not charged, tried, and convicted during their lifespan, the powers that be have decided we cannot enter their information into CODIS to see if it gets any hits. And I hate to hear that. I hate that that's the sad state of affairs right now, because a big part of me, my true crime brain goes, you put these guys into CODIS and that thing could light up like a Christmas tree.
What is their
who
reasoning for that?
Well, that it's all this red tape and legal. You know, we do have the right. Every individual in this country has the right to face.
Oh, I guess,
his
yeah.
accusers.
Okay, you're
And
right.
because that's not going on. But really, am I worried about the rights of a dead man that I knew killed two people, or in the Colonial Parkways case killed three? No, I'm not. I'm not worried about their rights at all. But so you talk about our cases today, 82 Jane Doe, Broward County, 88. If the law enforcement experts are correct in what they're telling us, these are homicide cases, you can still get charged up about them for all the reasons we just discussed. There's reasons to believe that both of these cases can be solved. A large part of that's going to be, can we identify the victims, right? Because the statistics will tell you that 9 times out of 10, person A who kills person B, they knew each other. They had some type of relationship. They had beef. They had a reason not to like one another. You know, that's just the nature of murder. And so when you have victims who are unidentified and remain unidentified for decades, we don't know their social circle. So we don't even know who to start talking to, who to start asking. When's the last time you saw her? Do you know anybody that would want to harm her? We have nobody to ask those questions to. And then I say if, because I actually, even with what little information we have here, guys, I don't think that they are juveniles. I think that they're probably young adults. And I say that simply because with a child, you would expect there to be some kind of missing person. And I know that they've attempted to connect Jane Doe 88 to several missing girls and have had no success. And it's not to say that this wouldn't be a missing person from far away. And that would certainly create complications. But the way that these things often work is it's usually a young person that's already out on their own. And that's why we've not been able to connect it to any known missing person. Because in both of these cases, you've already went through the description of what is known about both of these victims and did a beautiful, masterful job of doing so. But the thing that sets them apart from any other unidentified remains out there is the injuries that are discussed, right? That lower back or even with 88, you have the hip, either injury or arthritis, osteoarthritic condition. And, so because height and weight is really up for interpretation.
Right.
And
especially when they're skeletal.
Yeah. And when you see the large time frame that they're giving for possible age range on these two victims,
right,
that tells me, and I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist. Lauren, you would know much more about this than either me and Ken, but the body changes obviously as we grow and as we grow old, grow up and grow old. But there are things that were identifiers to us to tell us that, well, they're not younger than 12 years old. They're not, older than 30 years old. But other than that, I mean, and I know I'm not being very specific as to the years that they gave us, but really that's kind of the window that we're looking at with both of these individuals. So I think we're probably talking about two cases where these could be 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old young women. Maybe not from the area, which would complicate your case as well. But again, these cases are solvable for a multitude of reasons.
All right. Well, they're saying that 1988 was between 14 and 25, and 1982 was between the age of 11 and 20, which is strange because the depictions I'm looking at, 1982 appears older than 1988 in the forensic, rendition of what they may have looked like, but they're saying that they believe that 82 might be younger.
There's a few different agencies reporting on both of these cases, and when you guys, when we're sending all these people to look at this information, I do want to throw a caveat out there to everyone that the information does slightly change. There's no great detail that changes when you look at the different reporting by different agencies, but it is slightly different. And I do believe there was at least one agency suggesting that 88 could have been a smoker as well. Now, I really only got interested in the 82 case because of some of the similarities that she shared with Jane Doe 88.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you look at the before NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, got involved with these two cases. So the rendition that we are showing in the campaign, choosing to show, is the NCMEC computer generated image of Jane Doe 88. And in that, if you go back and look at the sketch that was originally created for this unidentified person, unidentified remains, I think NamUs calls them what, unclaimed persons.
Yeah.
But if you look at the old sketch, that old rendition that was done, that picture to me, to my eyes, looks older than the way the 80s is depicted.
Yeah, she looks like she could be in her 40s in the older photo.
Exactly. And then once you get NCMEC who steps in and look, they're using newer technology, better resources, better funded. So if we have to pick one that's probably more accurate, I'm going to go with the newer, updated version, the one that we're choosing to release to the masses.
Mm-hmm.
But that one has her looking quite young, quite like scary young, like school bus young.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, I see a huge difference. And I wonder, maybe you can shed light on this, Nick. What exactly would make them change that imagery, though? Because that is a significant change. Any idea what might have prompted them to do that drastic of a change to make her appear younger?
Well, the problem here is that I worry that I muck up somebody's investigation with my speculation here. But oh well, let's do it. I mean, it's been 1988. So one of the details that stood out to me in the limited information that is provided to us about Jane Doe 88 is that when she was recovered, it's believed that she had been there for a considerable amount of time. I'm talking like for years.
Yeah.
So what that would tell me, and Lauren, I know a little, I'm not going to pretend to know all of your background, but I know some of your background. So again, you would know a lot of this anatomy stuff better than myself, but I'm guessing soft tissue, a lot of, we're not dealing with any of that. A lot of cartilage, probably not much in the way of that. There's not a lot that's going to remain in certain conditions after a period of years.
Especially in South Florida. I mean, where she was found, from what I can tell, it looks like an area with water. I'm surprised she was even found, to be honest with you, because of the alligators. Right. I mean, where she was found was very Everglades swamp. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine there was really, I don't even know, it doesn't say if they found a full skeleton or not, but I don't know how you would figure out what she looks like. I don't know what they found, so anyway.
Well, and that is exactly why I got involved in this particular case. So let's circle back to why I got involved in it.
Okay, yeah. Why did you get involved in this case?
Well, so going off of the idea that I share your opinions. I'm surprised she was found. It sounds to me like she's only discovered because of a construction project that was underway. So somebody or at least attempted to do a very good job of concealing her.
Yeah.
3, the amount of time that she had been, from what we're told, she was likely concealed for years, is what a couple of the reports have told me. So I got involved in it because somebody had reached out to me, one of our wonderful, brilliant, fantastic listeners. I'm telling you, True Crime Garage, that's why we're popular. We got the most incredibly smart listeners and audience out there. And why they listen to the two of us is beyond me, because it's like Wayne and Garth delivering the true crime news to you. But we're lucky to have them. And
hey, we're listeners.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean. And in many ways, our listeners are smarter than us. And once in a while, they get up the courage to give us some good information. And so somebody reached out to me and said, hey, Nick, I've attempted to reach out to some people and talk to some people about this case. And she's saying there's a young woman, Shannon Potter, who went missing. And I'm going to go off of memory here. So everybody out there in listener land, forgive me if I'm off by a year or two on some of these dates and some of the details. But Shannon Potter goes missing. From my understanding, it sounds willingly, like leaves her house. I don't know. I'm not going to say that it was a bad situation. She could have just been a defiant teenager, right? The three of us have certainly come across one or two of those in our day. But Shannon Potter goes missing from the great state of Pennsylvania. And her mother, so we have a detective, they're actually working the missing persons case, even though every indicator says that she left willingly. And one thing that indicates that even further is that a postcard was sent to her mother months after she had left the home. And the postcard says something to the effect of, "Hi, Mom, I'm fine. I'm down in Florida." And I don't know all the details of what was written, but it's a postcard, right? So we're not talking about a lengthy letter or probably even a good reason why of leaving or what her intentions would be going forward. But what we do know, police have confirmed that the postcard that was sent to the mother, and the mother believes it to be from her daughter, believes that it was her handwriting and would have been written and scripted the way that her daughter would have scripted a postcard. It's postmarked. The stamp is telling us it's from Orlando, Florida. So this very smart listener starts trolling around looking for unidentified remains in Florida that could match up with the description of Shannon Potter. Well, she discovered that injury, that lower back hip injury, whether it's, with our Jane Doe, we can't say, right? Like the experts aren't even telling us if it was from an injury or if it was just from repeated use or arthritis, but there was something there, right? There's something that not every human being has on this particular body.
Right.
And Shannon Potter had been in a vehicle accident when she was young that caused her to have something that would be very similar to what we're seeing with this Jane Doe 88. And so this brilliant listener says, I think it could be the same person. And I look at it and I get a lot of emails. Okay. And some of them are brilliant like these ones, and other ones they could use some work, let's say. So with this one, with any of them, I kind of vet the information that I'm getting and decide what am I going to do with it from there. If there's smoke, there could be fire. If it's just all somebody blowing smoke up my, then there's no fire. So with this one, I'm looking at the information that's sent, and I'm looking and trolling around with these unidentified remains that have been found in Florida. And the thing that intrigued me was not just that injury or arthritic condition that kind of aligns itself with missing person, Shannon Potter, 2 unidentified remains, but I'm looking at the information of, well, these unidentified remains have been concealed for years. Okay, well, Jane Doe 88 was discovered in 1988. Well, Shannon Potter goes missing, I believe, was 84.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's kind of lining up a little bit too. And then the concern that this individual had, and I immediately, so I contacted this person after I vetted the information and after I was seeing what they were seeing. And I call him up on the phone. I say, hey, what's your concern? And they said, well, I've reached out to some people and I want to make sure that these unidentified remains are not Shannon Potter, or that if they are Shannon Potter, we get our ducks in a row and we can push this case forward and solve the question of where Shannon Potter is. And I said, okay. And I said, well, the problem here that I'm seeing is that Shannon Potter's been excluded. And the listener said, yes, I saw that as well. But the problem I'm having with it, she says, is she believed that they had excluded Shannon Potter as a possible being these remains because of a discrepancy in the height. It's off by 1 inch. Okay.
Oh,
now
yeah.
Let's go back to what we talked about before. We don't know how much of these remains were recovered. We don't know what state they were in when they were recovered, but what state we do know that they were in is that the experts are telling us that they had been concealed for years, out in the elements for years, buried for years. So now you start to go, well, again, I'm no expert. I did do a little a very exciting and intriguing 3-day CSI course in Indiana. So I know just enough to be dangerous, right? Just enough to muck up to completely muck up an investigation. But I started going, well, yeah, the 1 inch off doesn't seem like a big deal when we're talking about a situation where we may not have recovered all the remains, or we don't have a full understanding of what the conditions were.
So to your knowledge, has Shannon Potter been excluded? Is that the only reason she was excluded, or how? Well, okay, go ahead.
That's why the listener contacted me, because the answers they were getting was that, yes, that's why Shannon Potter had been excluded, because there was a height discrepancy. Now, so I did some work on it and got into contact with several good people that had awareness of the case, the detective that was working the case at the time when I got involved, and the medical examiner as well. And so I got all of the people together on the phone, and what I wanted was confirmation from more than one source that had been involved that said, we excluded Shannon Potter for these number of reasons, not just the height. And of course, the main one that I was concerned about was, had she been excluded using DNA? And if not, can we figure out a way to make that process happen? And so what was confirmed to me by more than one source, independent of each other, was, yes, in fact, they had the same suspicions and wanted to conclusively rule Shannon Potter out, and that they had used DNA. They went back and they got some, because remember, her mom was actively involved in looking for her. So they go and they're able to collect DNA from the mother, and then use that in comparison to the DNA from the remains. And then they figure out this is not a match. So we can conclusively say, based off of that information, that Shannon Potter is not our unidentified person that was found in 1988, Jane Doe in Broward County. But do you guys see the potential silver lining there?
Yes.
We have DNA of our unidentified victim. So that is how we will be able to push this case forward if, in fact, that's a method that law enforcement is currently doing or getting ready to do or will do in the future. We don't know that because, as you guys know better than most with all of your coverage of these Florida cases, there's certainly a backlog with a lot of these situations, be it murder victims, rape cases, unidentified remains, and then the long list. My God, Florida has the longest list of missing people I've ever seen.
I know.
It was over 14,000.
It's so sad. It's so sad. And I think would you two agree, having been there, living the Paradise After Dark experience firsthand, would you agree that that has a lot to do with the climate?
I feel like
I say this because I come from a state where it's you've come up and seen True Crime Garage at Brewdog and hung out with us, and we invited you up here for this, and so it can get pretty damn cold about 4 or 5 months out of the year,
right?
And so there's a different, how can I phrase this? There's a different active outdoor lifestyle being conducted by homeless, mentally ill, and drug addicted persons in my state than the active outdoor lifestyle that they may have in a tropical place like Florida.
You're right.
Yeah, you figure there's no preservation period, as I call it. In other words, we don't freeze, we don't get too cold. So, at any given time, if someone is murdered or a body is disposed of, it only takes, especially now with the rains, we've had nothing but rain for 2 weeks. It's humid. So you figure, a body less than a month's time. And then when the bones are exposed, then obviously the sun takes its effect. Anyone who's ever thrown a Pepsi can out in the sun, in 2 days, it turns pink. I'm sorry, like a Coke can. You see it's red and it turns pink. It takes no time for the sun to start breaking stuff down in Florida. And there's no break. There's no break from the sun. It's 365 pretty much.
Well, and also, there's no hibernation in Florida, if you will. People are out and about. Up north, people stay home in the winter. They're not out. They're not in the street. They're not, especially the homeless. They're not, the homeless people, they try and get themselves put in jail for the winter, right? When it's cold. That's what I was told.
Some do. They that's not uncommon. The other thing too is the population swells for the shelters up here in the cold months. In the warm months, you can't get the homeless to go to the shelters because they can't be drinking, or they can't show up there and not be sober, or at least be able to fake it. And they have a curfew. And I'm speaking from, I lived in Columbus for years, and worked security in Columbus, was the head of security for a very large property for years in Columbus. And we would regularly encounter homeless people, and I would encourage them to go to the shelter. And so I've gotten into some debates with persons that I'm saying that the best place for you to go, buddy, is to the shelter. And they're giving me reasons A, B, C, and D why they're not going to go. But the cold months, you don't have those arguments. They show up. There's a line out the door before they can close that door. So you're right. It really, in a weird way, it provides kind of more of a natural checks and balances of these people having to check in and being accounted for, right? Making their name, making their way on some list somewhere. And I love going to Florida. And in fact, I'm lucky enough to go there about twice a year. And if I didn't have to work so much, I'd be down there a few more times a year. But I swear, and I'm not, don't say this with a smile on my face at all, but I swear every time I'm there, it's like I hear on the news, found this person found dead in this camp. You know, they might refer to it as a camp or a wooded area, and the doctors or medical examiner says the individual's been deceased for 4 to 6 months or 6 to 8 months. And a lot of that to me, when I'm in Florida, it seems like it's unfortunately homeless people passing away for any number of reasons. And then they're just there, right? They're just undiscovered. They just lay there where they passed until somebody finds them.
Well, and a lot, especially in our area, and I know that where you visit is our area. So there's a lot of people think of Florida, they think of the beach and everything, but there's so much swampland. There's so much
Yeah.
dense wooded land everywhere. I mean, it's more densely wooded pines and cabbage palms than there are beaches, to be honest. I mean, for people that have never been to Florida or don't really know what it's actually like here, it's not what you see on TV. So if you are a homeless person and you are building yourself a little den somewhere, you're going to be in a densely wooded area. You're not going to be out by a street or on a beach or where people are. And if you commit a murder and you want to hide a body, you're going to put it in one of these densely wooded areas. And that's why, people are found after 4 months, after 6 months, after 4 years. They're still finding bodies. It's like whenever there's a construction project and our area is growing insanely fast and they're finding bones, they're finding, I mean, and who knows at this point how long they've been there, or I mean, you could even go back to where we live was all tribal land back in the 1800s. So who knows what you can find.
Yeah, and yes, you're exactly right. I think most people that are unfamiliar, they envision Miami, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
they think of Miami, and most of the areas that I've been in Florida, I'm regularly driving and I'm looking off to my left or right going, yeah, I'm not going in there. That patch of woods and wilderness and swamp or whatever it is, wetlands, I'm not going in there. I can't traverse that terrain there. Where here, it is much different. And one name that I want to make sure that we include here today, I talked earlier about the CODIS database and killers' DNA, now known killers who are deceased, their DNA that will not be entered into CODIS. There's a great article that, and it is a little bit of just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but it's a great article for the layperson to have a better understanding of why that is. And you can search, get on your little internet machines and search local serial killers DNA. So this is the title. You can look up Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. is the individual that they've connected to 2 of the 8 Colonial Parkway homicides. And they also connected him to another homicide that's not related to that series. But this article, and it's a lengthy headline, but it goes into all the reasons why. So the lengthy headline from 13 News is a local serial killer's DNA will not be entered into CODIS database. 13 News now investigates why. And they give great reasons that are better than what I could go into. But back to our Jane Doe 88. There is an interesting story that came out, and this would have been in 1998. So there was a theory that Broward County Sheriff's Department was working with our Jane Doe 88 case. And they were working this theory late 97 and into midway through 98. Now, when they stopped working this theory, they don't tell us. I believe they're not working this theory currently because of just the passage of time. But there was a story that had came out. So our case kind of resurfaces here all these years later from 88 to 98. And they were trying to connect an individual who had killed a person in Alabama, the state of Alabama, and attempted to kill another person in the state of Alabama. Now, the victimology in that case does not match up with the victimology of who it was thought based off of this theory that Jane Doe would have been. Okay, so they arrest this guy. He had killed one, attempted to kill two, was unsuccessful with the second one. And after he's been arrested, he's talking to somehow authorities in Florida get in contact with this dude from the committed these crimes in Alabama. And he tells him, he says, about 10 years ago, I was out partying, picked up this girl. He says something like, I believe her name was Melissa, gives a great description of her, says I killed her for this reason. Didn't really give a great, I mean, they're never a good reason, but the reason he says didn't make any sense to me. But the reason why they kind of connected him to this Jane Doe 88 was, he says it's about the same time period. Killed her about 10 years ago. And, I disposed of the body here. You talked about that canal earlier and where Jane Doe 88 was found. Mm-hmm. That would have been the area that he was talking about. And so for about at least approximately a 9-month time period, police in Broward County were working off of the theory that we know who the killer is. Now, can we identify the victim? And I can say, not with certainty, I want to be clear here. We can't say this with certainty. And I also want to be clear about something else too. When you hear these kinds of stories, I don't like when these kinds of stories come out, especially when they're proven to be false. And what I would prefer is when they're proven to be false, can we get law enforcement to tell us that? Broadcast it, shout it from the mountaintops, because what happens is people have a tendency of thinking that these cases get solved or that they were solved and that there's no call to action. There's no need to do anything. So a story like this, while you sit there and you go, okay, I'm optimistic, maybe they're onto something. But when it turns out to be nothing and that breadcrumb trail goes cold and there's no crumbs left to trace, shout it from the mountaintops so everybody understands this case hasn't been solved. And so that case, to me, I reviewed all the information that they had went through and the information provided by the person who was saying that he had did this. Now, I'm not calling this murderer a liar. For all I know, he killed somebody and it's not our Jane Doe 88 and they've not connected him to the correct victim. But we also know that in some of these cases that there are a multitude of reasons, any number of reasons why a criminal may prefer to be locked up in a certain facility, in a certain location, or even a certain state. And so we don't know the intentions or more importantly, the motivations for this individual to have confessed this to Florida law enforcement. Could it be that they had a guilty conscience and wanted to help? And that could be. Could it be that they are forever the con man and just trying to get their ass where they want it to be because it's easier for dad to come and visit me? Or I've heard that the prisons in this state are better than the prisons in this state, or more comfortable. So we don't know the motivations of that. What I will say, all of the information I reviewed, there were some major discrepancies in this murderer's story in comparison to the known information about Jane Doe 88. And think about that for a second, that statement that I just gave you. We know so little about Jane Doe 88. So if this guy could have got so much wrong, if we knew more about the victim, how much more would he have gotten wrong?
Right.
They're just some, he's according to his story, he killed and disposed of the victim around the same time that they're finding Broward County Jane Doe 88. But again, all the other information we review tells us, well, we believe she's been dead for possibly years. And so that is one of the big things that jumped off the page to me that just didn't line up. And there were several other things. You know, if his victim would have been discovered, I don't want to get too much into the details of it because, again, there's nothing to suggest that it's true. But there are other details about the case that it would have been easily confirmed to be a fallacy had his victim been found when he, you know, as quickly after he killed her as his story goes.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing too that, like, even on me in some cases we researched, and just to point this as an example, when Lauren told me that we were going to cover this case and we were going to do the Jane Doe 88, I started looking for missing people in 88. Then you find 2 to 3 years. So now you're like, okay, well, now you have to back your window up. So a lot of times when people hear Jane Doe 88, as we're talking about today, they may start thinking 88, but you have to go back to, 84, 85. You got to go back to that period and start searching, which I found myself a victim of that numerous times doing research for other cases we've covered. And it's frustrating because you start going down these rabbit holes and you realize it can't be, because this is sort of the postmortem interval of when they were found versus when they were probably most likely murdered and disposed of.
Well, and the thing too is, we do that, all of us, we do that. And the problem is, it's like, well, where do you stop? Right? Because how far do I go back? How far should I be going back? How far away should I be fanning this search out geographically? It very quickly becomes a very laborious task and almost a fool's errand, right? Because we cannot say that with the information provided to us that this young woman or even girl grew up in Alaska or Canada, and just the distance is why she's not been connected to the missing persons case, the appropriate one. So there's all these factors involved. But again, the silver lining that we fall back to with today's technology is the DNA, and based off of the information that was provided to me is that, yes, we use DNA to figure out who she was not. So I'm hoping that means that they're going to use DNA to figure out who she is.
Well, and now
Exactly.
they have the familial DNA and, the genetic aspect of it, which can also help identify. It doesn't just have to identify perpetrators. We can start figuring out who some of these does are. I just find what they're doing with DNA so amazing. The latest technology is just blows my mind. I think it's amazing.
Well, it is absolutely amazing. I get worried that there's going to be some people that are going to try to get in the way, and I don't know why they would be, what the motivation for that would be. I just worry that there's only, I don't know what the current number is, but you guys may remember, I don't know, we had a lot of beers at the Brewdog event, but at one of the Brewdog events, I was talking about what states it's legal to use genetic DNA to connect perpetrator to victim, and genealogy to connect perpetrator to victim. And at the time when we gave that talk and did that event in Brewdog, I believe it was the majority of the states. I want to say 29 was the number that at the time, which is still alarmingly low, right? Wouldn't you think? But I only knew that number from putting together and collecting so much information over the years about the Delphi case, being completely eyeballs deep in that Delphi case for so long, and knowing that after the Delphi victims, Libby and Abby, were killed, that it wasn't until after the state of Indiana passed the law of, now if you've been convicted of a felony, we collect your DNA, it goes into a database, and it is open for that genealogy detective work to connect you to other unsolved crimes, be it rapes and murders. And, here in Ohio, that law didn't pass until 2010. And so it's still, think about that, 2010. I mean, yeah, it's 2024, but that's still that's very recent. And so, you hope to see that progress in the right direction. And you hope that states where it's not currently protocol to collect your felon's DNA, you hope that to see that continue to go in the right direction.
Yeah, there's so many unturned stones with it that it could definitely be a great tool. I'm not sure how Florida works on that. I don't even know the rule. Do you know, Lauren?
I'm actually, it's funny you're saying that because I'm being quiet because I'm looking it up. I'm looking at the Florida statute right now, and it says that the first thing I'm coming across is saying that it only may be performed with express consent.
By the felon, by the
Well, hey, yeah. I have to look more into this. That's a good question. I just never thought of that not all states do that. And you're right, 29 is a low number. That's kind of concerning to me. I just assumed that, I guess it's bad to assume.
Well, no, but that's human nature. And
Yeah.
I think that we're good people with good hearts and trying to do good. So I think that we all are victim of kind of skipping through life thinking that everybody's doing the same. And it's, you see this stuff, and a lot of it, it's not that bad people are running the show. It's just that somebody has to push the envelope and get these laws to pass and get these bills through the appropriate channels and make it law, make it protocol. And until somebody does that, and oftentimes it's an advocacy group or family members, right? Family members band together that's the SATS club you can be a member of, is the family member of a murdered person. And oftentimes I've seen that it's the parents, a lot of times it's parents of murdered children banding together and getting the good politicians on their side and writing these bills and making it protocol. And
Right,
I know here in the state of Ohio, it's done a lot of good. Well, as we just saw, the Shenandoah murders case finally solved. That's from 1996, and yeah, it probably should have been solved a long time ago. But they're not pretending that they were actively working that case day in and day out since 1996. In 2021, that's the same time that they started to re-examine the Colonial Parkway murders cases as well, all those cases had gone cold. The FBI had taken a look over at them over the course of time and over the years, because of the nudging of the families involved. But it was rumored for a time, and there was a lot of speculation that maybe the Shenandoah case was connected to the Colonial Parkway case and that maybe committed by the same perpetrator or perpetrators. And so I'm smart enough to know and not dumb enough to believe that those two things, they don't start looking at those cases at the same time for no reason at all.
Yeah. So, but they aren't connected, are they?
No. In fact, that's what we now know. We know that Alan Wade Wilmer Sr.
Yes. Okay.
committed 2 of the 8 Colonial Parkway murders. And in all likelihood, he probably committed all 8 of them. The problem being that 2 of the victims are still missing. They've never been found. Some people refer to that as a missing persons case. I'm here to tell you it's a homicide case. The first victims, the crime scene was an absolute mess. And so they may not have great physical evidence in that case. So I don't think that not connecting him to all 8 of them is because he didn't do all 8. It's because I don't think they have the evidence to figure out who did it. And very likely, as I said, very likely he did it. I probably shouldn't say this because he's still alive, but I talked about it on True Crime Garage. So it's a little, the car's out of the garage now. So there's not much you can do, but I'm very suspicious of Alan Wade Wilmer Sr.'s brother. I think that I really firmly believe that the two of them committed a homicide together, or that the brother killed somebody that's not even a victim of the Colonial Parkway murders. If you're interested and you want to know more about that, you'll have to go to the garage to learn about those details in some of those cases. But yeah, I think there's a lot more that we can learn about the three killers that we talked about here today. And I'm hoping and praying that there is a lot more that we can learn about the two victims that still remain unidentified to this day in Broward County. And I will say this, a little bit more on the silver lining front here. At least one of these Jane Doe cases, I can say with 100% certainty, is very much an active case as far as Broward County Sheriff's Department is concerned. There is detectives that are taking the lead on these cases, and unfortunately, they are just one of many cases that they have. But I can say with 100% certainty that at least one of these cases is very active.
Okay. Well, again, it's hard to talk about a Jane Doe or a John Doe on a podcast because we don't have the normal information that we would be putting out on the podcast. But we're going to be really active with our social medias and putting out these photos and these details on both the Palmahawk Media socials and the Florida Themis Project socials. So if our listeners could share and help us, get the word out and keep it going. Like Nick said, their loyalties change over time. People change over time. Maybe somebody heard something 20 years ago. They were too afraid to come forward, and now they're not so afraid. It's never too late to say something if you know something. And that's how these cases get solved.
One thing I always say is I try to tell the listeners, look, if you know someone who lived in this area about the time that they were discovered, ask them if they know about it. Do you know the story of it? And just listen to the rumor. You never know what someone might tell you or how a story could change to where maybe in their mind they replayed it. If it's someone that was involved or knew something, they're going to tell the story a little differently. But as time progresses, sometimes the truth sort of surfaces, and that's really all they can tell you. So sometimes you just ask someone who lived in that Fort Lauderdale area, in the years that they were found. And that goes for pretty much all of the cases that we cover. And then anyone that's missing or unidentified, it's always helpful to just ask people who lived in that area at the time.
Exactly.
Well, and talking about people to ask and the right questions to ask these people, I want to say something here to the detectives that may be working this case currently, or again, very hopeful that one or both of these victims is identified soon, and now they know who the appropriate people to talk to would be. And, listeners, they're always a little, I'm sure people laugh when I say some of this stuff, but I can tell you from personal experience, listeners, you would be surprised how many people in law enforcement listen to some of these podcasts.
Oh, I know.
And it's just like them. They pay attention to the news. Back in the day, they read newspapers.
Right.
And part of that is that no matter how crazy the things we may be saying are, or how wrong they are, or how right they are, they want to tune in and they want to keep their finger on the pulse of these things. Now, so I'll take this moment to address any of the detectives that may be currently working it, or again, more importantly, working the case when they do identify these victims. We talked about if you can spin it to your advantage, a case being cold. How can you do that? Well, I'll tell you one way that you can do it, especially with the passage of all this time. So I know I kept bringing up serial offenders, people that had killed multiple people, serial killers throughout the course of this episode on unrelated cases. But most of the time, most people that end up killing someone only kill one person for the entirety of their life. Not every killer is Hannibal Lecter. Not every killer are the three killers that I mentioned here today by name. Most people that kill somebody only kill one person, and it has a dramatic effect on the rest of their life. And what will happen is one of two things. That person either becomes a better person, they start going to church, they start focusing on family, they start having a family, they find a spouse, they try to make themselves better so they never do that again. And in some way, maybe they can ease their own inner suffering of their own actions. They want to get as far away from that as they possibly can, not just in distance, but emotion. Or it can have the complete opposite, where the person completely melts down, goes into a total downward spiral, and their life gets out of control and gets very short, gets very dangerous very quickly. If I'm the detective and I now know the social circles, and when I figure out the social circles and the family and friends of these, or so-called friends or even enemies of these two individuals once they're identified, I'm looking for that dramatic change within those circles. That one person with that dramatic change within those circles. Hone in on that person and start talking to people about that person, what they know, and what changed for them in 1982 or 1988 or shortly after.
That's a good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I like the fact that, you said, the key basically is if you can identify these people, then you can begin to talk to people. So sometimes it's tough when you have a missing person or you find a person who's unidentified, and then there's a homicide, because now you have two issues you have to deal with. One, you have to figure out who this person is and who the perpetrator is. So sometimes just identifying the person makes a huge difference, because then you can speak to people and try to get some sort of timeline of their life to see who maybe saw them last or who potentially is the perpetrator.
Well, and hopefully that's something that we can do as a collective, right? That we give the power to the people, and let's get the masses involved here. And we have great organizations like the Florida Themis Project that can help to raise money and contact law enforcement and say, hey, we've got a list of names of people that want to know how they can help, what they can do to help. Maybe even open up their checkbooks to, if you got this DNA and you still got it, let's send it to the appropriate channels and fund it, and figure out who Jane Doe 82 is, and figure out who Jane Doe 88 is as well.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's our goal. Well, I just want to say thank you, Nick, so much for sponsoring our case this month. And thank you so much for joining us and your wisdom. It's always a pleasure. You're the GOAT. Like I'll always say that. And thanks for working with us. Well, and not just thank you for having me on this evening. And it's always a pleasure to get to talk with the both of you. But thank you for the friendship that we've had over the years as well. It Absolutely means a lot to me. And so I look forward to seeing you guys in the flesh very soon. And then after that, I'm hoping that I have another case for the Florida Themis Project again next year. So let's do it again in 2025. Awesome. All right. All right, everyone. That's it for this episode.
Please remember to check out our website for links to all of those social medias we discussed in this episode, our merch store, and much, much more. Please check out our nonprofit organization, the Florida Themis Project, that helps families, loved ones, and law enforcement with resources in missing persons, unsolved, and cold cases. You can check that out at floridathemisproject.org. And as always, thank you very much for listening to Paradise After Dark. Dark, 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 dark.